So now how would you respond to some cultures that, for a mom's perspective, it just feels so good to see their child eat? And they get a satisfaction of eating. So I'm thinking that's where some of the portion control is coming from too. It's like, oh, eat or finish your plate. You know, that's been a traditional statement that has been made. So how would you respond to that, parents, so they can make a change in their thought pattern as to say, you know what, they don't have to really finish their plate?
Yeah. So I think, you know, one of the things that we try to emphasize here in the School of Public Health is cultural sensitivity and trying to understand where we all come from in our culture, and understanding those underlying principles. So I think it's the importance to be able to understand from the mom's perspective of why she's asking the child to finish her plate, and then try to educate them that in fact maybe now there is more food available in the household, and so therefore they don't have to finish their plate. That allowing them to actually eat, you know, from what's being offered is a good thing, and if they're not hungry anymore, to stop at that point. You know, a lot of those habits came from not having enough food, not knowing when your next meal was going to be available. And so we had that tendency. Right now, there's very few, you know, and not that we've wiped them out completely, but there's very few instances where, you know, you don't know when your next meal is coming from, that you actually need to emphasize that.
Gotcha. And I know the last point that I wanted to make sure before we wrap up is that sometimes, even though we have childhood obesity, our children are still under nourished.
Oh, that's a very good point. I'm so glad you brought that up. I mean, just because a child is heavy or even an individual is heavy doesn't mean they're getting the right sort of mixture of nutrients that they're supposed to be getting. And that with, I mean, vitamins and minerals and fiber, because normally you're not necessarily eating all the good stuff. Sometimes you might be eating all good stuff and not burning off the excess calories, but a lot of times it's because you're eating unhealthy, and so you're eating high sugar, high fat foods,
and that's why we're still hungry.
And well, that's you're just not getting the right nutrients. You know.
Gotcha. Okay. Any last closing remarks for us, Anna Maria?
You know, I think sometimes it's really important for us to be good role models for our kids, and I think we need to keep that in mind. We all want to live long enough to be able to see our grandchildren.
Absolutely.
And if we can sort of keep in mind, even though I know it's hard to have evidence to show that what you eat makes a difference, I think we all fundamentally believe it.
Absolutely. And just speaking of that, I know I want to leave a healthy legacy from my daughter as well. How would you even respond to some alternative health solutions as well? I know you mentioned a lot about making sure your foods have vitamin D or vitamin A in it. So if they're not getting what they need from the foods they're eating, any alternative solutions that you would recommend as well?
Well, you know, children will go through periods where they might be very, very picky eaters, and so the use of a multivitamin is totally appropriate in those instances. You know, but we would love to have children eat healthy foods so they get all the nutrients out of that, but that's where the multivitamins come in that actually provide a buffer during those sort of, you know, valleys, you should say, of when they're not necessarily eating so well, or where they might be sick and they might not be able to eat as a normal balanced meal.
Okay. Thank you, Anna Maria.
You're welcome.
For joining
Pleasure.
us today. Thanks for letting us in and bombarding you with all these questions that a lot of parents want to know and want to find out about. So that is it for today for really focusing on your children's health. So again, we wanted to make sure that we're bringing you informative, factual and information, as well as providing you with some solutions that you can start today. So thanks for joining me. I'm Katriel Holloway, your host, your health advocate for Your Health Today.